this time I will call the meeting to order for November the 6th. And I would, at this time, seeing as how it's Remembrance Day on Saturday, I would ask everyone to rise for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Mrs. Hunter, our CAO, to give us a little update with regards to our staff.
Through you, Your Worship. Tonight I'm pleased to announce the appointment of Alex Denonville to the position of Manager Communications for the Town of Essex. Most recently, Alex has held the position of Events Planner with the Essex Region Conservation Authority, where he organized events to engage the public and various stakeholders, utilizing various communication and media tools, in addition to overseeing the authority's website and social media accounts. Prior to this, Alex began his career as a reporter photographer with the Athabasca Advocate and Slave River Journal. He then took on the role of communications coordinator for the municipality of Athabasca County, where he developed and implemented the county's communication strategy, which included print products, electronic and social media, media relations, policy formation, as well as staff training. A graduate of Wilfrid Laurier University, Alex holds a bachelor's in journalism and in contemporary studies and a master's in community engagement and social justice, where his major research paper focused on community engagement and civic participation in the municipal context. Please join me in welcoming Alex to our organization. If you could stand up, Alex.
We won't put you on the spot tonight, Alex, okay? And I'd also like to say that we have Mrs. Lori Brett, our assistant clerk, with us for the first time under fire, as our clerk, Robert Auger, is under the weather and not able to speak tonight. So, Lori, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please be gentle.
Okay, at this time I'll ask if there's any conflicts of interest among the council members. No, that's always good. Looking for the adoption of the published agenda with any additions first, please. Okay. Councillor Snively. No additions. Oh, no additions. Moved.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. We've received notice from Councillor Vokes that he'd like to bring a notice of motion to be brought back on the November 20th agenda. And the motion would be this, that the speed limit on Gosfield Town Line West between Highway number 3 and Talbot Street South, or County Road 34, be reduced to 60 kilometers an hour. So we'll place that on tonight's agenda to be brought back next week. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to move our report from youth member up, as Ava needs to leave at 7:30 tonight. So I'm proposing that we move item 9, which is report from youth member, before item 8, which is reports from administration. And I think that'll give Ava lots of time to do her work.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bond. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now,
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been trying to get it onto the agenda for the last couple of weeks. I don't see it again unless I'm over missing it. I want to talk about the health care concerns in our community. Is that there?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. It's on here as a notice of motion, Randy, under item 15.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 15.1.2.
Yep, okay, I overlooked it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
okay, we need a motion to adopt the minutes for this evening. Councillor Snively. Yes, with a question. Okay. Support? I'll get support for that motion. Councillor Bjorkman. Councillor Snively.
Yes, under notice of the motion on line 15.11, it says here, administration prepare report on bylaw. Okay, half ton. Okay, half ton trucks, that's wrong. That's half ton pickup, so it should be half load on the dump. Okay, just verify that. Okay, thanks.
Anything else? All in favor? Motion carries.
So item 5 on the agenda is adoption of minutes, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held October 16th, 2017 be adopted as circulated.
Support.
Moved by Councillor Vogt, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Okay. Item 7.1 under unfinished business is related to a tabled motion from the October 16th regular meeting related to banner poles in Harrow Centre. It was moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Deputy Mayor Malash, that Infrastructure and Development Report 2017-11 be received, and that the selection of the site location for one set of banner poles in Harrow Centre be tabled until tonight's meeting. So, we need a resolution to take it off the table.
For a motion to remove this from the table, Councillor Bondi and Deputy Mayor Malash. Mover and seconder. All in favor of that motion? Motion carries.
Now we need a motion identifying the location.
Now we're open for discussion as to where we want to put the poles. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the chamber meeting last week, along with the CEO, Donna Hunter, and our Director of Community Services, Doug Sweet, the chamber had a debate about where the poles should be located. And they would prefer the location that is closer to town, the one that administration didn't really want because of logistics. But, you know, it's still up to debate. It's a council decision, but the chamber did say, I don't know, they had reasons. I don't know if our Director of Community Services remembers any of those reasons more than I did. I think they just felt that it should be in town, not outside of town. That's kind of the gist of what I got, which was my first gut instinct when I thought about the location for the banner poles. I don't know if the other councillors from the region have any thoughts on that, but it was discussed at the chamber, and the chamber did pick the road, I'm not sure, was it Sinisac or Munger? One, I don't have my map here right now, but Sinisac? South of Sinisac. That's just what the chamber is saying.
Sinisac, I'm just having trouble remembering which one was Sinisac now.
It was on Queen. Queen and
The
Sinisac.
one on Queen?
Queen and Sinisac.
Queen and Sinisac, okay. Yeah, okay, right, okay. Mr. Sweep, you want to make any comments, or, no? That's good, good enough. Okay, Councillor Vokes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, it's about placing a poll, okay? I don't want to beat this to death, and I don't want to become the coffee shop conversation tomorrow about how council can't even figure out where to put a banner on a pole at. Can we move along with it, please? I'll support the recommendation of our administration to put the pole wherever they're recommending we put it. I don't want to give people any more fuel than they already have. And I'm looking for a seconder and support on that.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, administration did not give a recommendation. They gave 4 options. So the chamber has suggested that their wishes would be that it go by Sinisac. Mr. Nepsey has the map up there.
finish? Councillor Bondi? Okay, I have Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Snively.
Thank you, through your worship. I'd just like to say I think this is the table to talk about things at, and we'll discuss them as we need to. I believe that Councillor Bondi has brought forward a suggestion that the chamber is good with, and the town doesn't have an issue with that location. So I'm more than in favor of going with that. They're the ones that need the polls. They need the information gotten out, so let's go with their recommendation.
We're not taking a motion. It's just his opinion. I have a couple other people here with comments before I'll accept a motion, please. Councillor Snively.
Through your worship, I support the recommendation here. So when the time comes right, Councillor Bjorkman, if you want, you can make a motion. But I do support it.
Okay, any other comments with regards to this? Okay? Okay, we had, who's making the motion, Councillor Bondi or Councillor Bjorkman?
Sure, the motion that the banner poles be located between Munger and Sinisac.
Right. Supported by Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions to the motion? Nope. All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 9 is report from youth member. Ava?
Welcome, young lady.
Hi. Okay, hi everyone. Tonight I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that a few schools have reached out to us by responding to an email regarding wanting me to speak to the classes about youth political involvement. So currently I'm working on a short speech to present to all of the schools and to acquire a second youth member and as well as establish a youth focus group. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And, you know, if you need any assistance, we have a young man here that's working for us now that I'm sure would be more than happy to give you a hand. Right, Alex?
Yes.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eva, which schools are you going to?
That's a good question that I have in my emails. I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And anytime you feel you have to leave, Eva, go ahead. Thank you very much. Yeah. Motion to receive Eva's report. Councillor Bjorkman, Deputy Mayor Malage. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 8, reports from administration. Item 8.1 is CAO Report 2017-004 concerning the 2018 water and sanitary sewer rates, that the report be received, and that bylaw 1653, being a bylaw to establish Town of Essex water and sanitary sewer rates and charges, be read a first and a second time and be provisionally adopted this evening.
Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Rogers. Any questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps just briefly, this CAO, or yes, the CAO or Mr. Morrison, whoever submitted this, can briefly describe why the difference in the rates between the wards. Like we go from 1396 to 2446, just briefly so that the residents have a better
Mrs.
understanding.
Hunter, our CAO.
Through you, Worship. Back a few years ago, when we had done a water wastewater review, we had been using the standard 175 cubic meters as the average per ward, per household. And in looking at what we were realizing as revenues in wards 3 and wards 4, we were realizing that the amounts that, especially for Ward 4, that we were using as the average were not the average, they were much lower. Now, unfortunately, my computer crashed, and so I'm trying to go from memory here. I believe the average in wards 1 and wards 4 are 175, and I believe it's 140 in wards 3. So what we had to do in order to ensure that our reserves were coming up to where they should be, we had to do a bit of a catch-up. In order to do that, we had to raise the rates more for that ward, Ward 3, than the rest of the wards. that make, is that what you need?
Yes,
Follow up?
and thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just so the general public know, the sewer rates, water is the same, water's going up the same throughout the municipality, but the sewer rates, there's pockets. If it's a Ward 1, there's, the pocket of money is Ward 1. If it's a Ward 4, the pocket of money is Ward 4.
Through your worship, that is correct. We keep the sanitary sewer systems, revenues and expenses entirely separate from one another.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8.2 is a verbal report from our Chief Administrative Officer, Donna Hunter, on Bill 68.
She'll be at her desk in a second. Larry.
Through your worship, thank you very much. Tonight I want to walk council through Bill 68. This is legislation that received royal assent just earlier this year. It has a lot of impacts that I think are important for council going immediately and into the future, because they have very different implementation days, or days when they become in effect. So I'm going to walk you through it. It's a little boring, I'm sorry, but I think it's information that council needs to have. So Bill 68, in summary, is legislation that amended our Municipal Act 2001, our Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and the City of Toronto Act 2006, which doesn't impact us at all. The key themes of the changes in the Municipal Act are accountability and transparency, municipal financial sustainability, responsible and flexible municipal government. And as I said before, the effective dates for a lot of this are varying, so I will go through those dates with you as we go through the different sections of the bill. So starting from one of the most important things, Bill 68 has expanded the definition of a meeting through Section 238(1) of the Municipal Act. So before, meeting was defined as means any regular, special, or other meeting of a council, of a local board, or of a committee, or either of them where, and this is where it's changed. The word where is the starting point. A quorum of members is present, and members discuss or otherwise deal with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. This is probably a huge step in terms of our legislation, because we've never really had a true definition of what a meeting is. So just as a note, activities that may constitute a meeting includes a series of emails, a series of phone calls to individual members, or a series of one-on-one meetings. This will come into effect January 1st, 2018. Bill 68 has also introduced electronic participation at meetings through subsections 238, 3.1, and 3.2, which were added to the Municipal Act. And so 238, 3.1 says that the applicable procedure bylaw, so our procedure bylaw, may provide, and the key word here is may. This is not compulsory that councils adopt this. They have the opportunity to adopt it. So it may provide that a member of council or of a local board of a committee or of either of them can participate electronically in a meeting which is open to the public to the extent and in the manner set out in the bylaw, provided that any such member shall not be counted in determining whether or not a quorum of members is present at any point in time. Section 238, 3.2 goes on to say that basically that electronic participation is not permitted in a closed meeting. So in order to implement electronic participation, there will have to be some discussion with council as to whether or not this is an option that they want to take. And in the chance that they do, and at this point I'm going to suggest that maybe they will let some of the others lead the way, and we'll see how they do it, because there's really no precedent here for us to follow. So some of the decisions that would have to be required, first of all, do you want electronic participation at meetings? If you are interested in that, we'll need to make revisions to our procedural bylaw to define the electronic means for participating in meetings. So whether it's a teleconference, video conference, or what other means that is preferred. Who must be physically present in the meeting room? For example, the head of council, chair, or staff. When an electronic participation will be permitted. In other words, is the meeting on a subject where time is of the essence and it's important to get that decision made? A key matter to be considered, and whether it'll be for all meetings or just certain types of meetings. And then rules surrounding electronic participation. For example, the notice required for electronic participation, notice of departure from meetings. So when the person that's on the other end decides to leave the meeting, there has to be some notice provided. A verbal roll call, voting protocol, procedure, if for any reason that communication is disrupted. So there is a lot to be done here. And like I say, I think at this point, until others get into this, I think it'd be nice to kind of wait and see how others have set this up, because it is very, very new. Currently, there are 7 discretionary exceptions to open meetings. The usual security of municipal property, personal matters about an identifiable individual, proposed pending acquisition, and so on. The normal ones that you see on your agenda when we decide to have a closed meeting. They've added some more. There's 4. The first one is information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or a local board by Canada, a province or territory or crown agency. The second one is a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence, which, if disclosed, could prejudice the competitive position or interfere significantly with contractual or other negotiations of a person, of a group of persons, or an organization. And then the next one is related to trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or the local board that has a monetary value or potentially a monetary value. And finally, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. This is really broadening up the times when you can have a closed meeting, and it has raised a lot of concerns and all of the input that has been received by the province, because this really, really is opening it up. And it's not something that really promotes transparent government. This will come into effect January 1st, 2018. So getting into changes to municipal conflict of interest declarations. So right now, Section 5.1 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act currently states that where a member, either on his or her own behalf or while acting for, by, with, or another, has a pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, is present at the meeting, the member shall, prior to the item being considered, disclose the interest and the general nature thereof, shall not take part in the discussion or the vote on any question in respect of the matter, and shall not attempt before, during, or after the meeting to influence the vote. Bill 68 amends the Conflict of Interest Act by adding the following, 5.1. At a meeting at which a member discloses an interest under Section 5, or as soon as possible thereafter, the member shall file a written statement of the interest in its general nature with the clerk of the municipality or the secretary of the committee or local board. So in other words, when you have a conflict of interest, it will be required that at some point you're going to provide that conflict, the general nature of it and the conflict itself, to the clerk in writing. That comes into effect March 1st, 2019. The Bill 68 also requires that a conflict of interest registry be created, so that a copy of each statement that is provided by a council member of a conflict of interest is maintained and filed with the municipality, and a copy of each declaration is recorded. So in other words, this will have to be something that we actually maintain, this registry, and this registry has to be available for public inspection. So I suspect the best way for this to happen would be to have it on our website. This will also become effective March 1st, 2019. There's exceptions related to the code of conduct, and this relates to consideration of penalty. So in the past, anybody that received a penalty through an investigation by an integrity commission could not speak to the matter. Now the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act allows that person to speak, and as well as does the Municipal Act, and strictly to take part in the discussion of the matter, including making submissions. And now that person can also attempt to influence the voting in respect of the matter, whereas before that was a conflict of interest and had to be declared. In the case of a meeting that is not open to the public, the member may attend the meeting or part of the meeting where the matter is considered. Again, most of the items under the Conflict of Interest Act are effective March 1st, 2019. There's new provisions under the Conflict of Interest Act regarding use of influence. So where a member has any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in a matter being considered by an officer or an employee of the organization or the municipality, and this is related to not to council itself and as a body when they're considering, but this is related to a matter that is being considered by an employee or an officer. The member shall not use his or her office to influence any decision or recommendations resulting from such consideration. And then 5.22, if a municipality delegates a power to suspend remuneration of a council member under the Municipal Act, does not prevent the member from attempting to influence any decision or recommendation. Then, with respect to application to a judge when a member is alleged or to have had a conflict of interest that hasn't been declared, there has been some changes as to who can make that application to the judge. So currently only electors are able to make application. Bill 68 expands on who can make that by also including integrity commissioners of the municipality or a person demonstrably acting in the public interest. In terms of timing of application, both current and revised legislation provide application may only be made within 6 weeks of the alleged contribution. Bill 68 provides that application may be made more than 6 weeks after the contravention if the applicant is an integrity commissioner and the application relates to an inquiry that the IC has been conducting. In terms of the things that a judge may do in terms of if he finds that there is, and sorry I'm losing my voice here, that there is a conflict of interest, right now they can declare the seat of the member vacant. They can disqualify the member from running in an election for up to 7 years. Or they may, where the contravention has resulted in personal financial gain, require that the member make restitution of that amount. Bill 68 adds basically 2 more things to that list of things that a judge may do, and that is to reprimand the member member or former member, or suspend the remuneration, similar to code of conduct contravention for up to 90 days. Policies, the section 271 of the Municipal Act requires that the municipality have certain policies. Some of them are sale and disposition of land, hiring of employees, procurement of goods and services, and so on. They've now added 3 more policies that need to be developed. And first is the relationship between members of council and the officers and employees of the municipality. So in other words, a council staff relations policy. We've addressed some of that in our code of conduct, but we'll have to see what their actual requirements are to see if we need an actually separate policy. Sorry. The manner in which a municipality will protect and enhance the tree canopy and natural vegetation in the municipality. I believe this is something that Doug has partially started to work on. And then pregnancy leaves and parental leaves for members of council. So in other words, a pregnancy and parental leave policy. And these come into effect March 1st, 2019. Currently, the Municipal Act provides that if you're the subject of a closed meeting investigation, in terms of what council must do when the investigation and the report from the investigators brought forward, that simply the investigator is giving recommendations in terms of what he or she thinks are fit for the crime, if you will. Bill 68 amends that so that if a municipality, thank you, if a municipality or local board receives a report from a person referred to in clause 239, which is an investigator or the ombudsman, reporting his or her opinion and the reasons for it, that a meeting that was the subject matter of an investigation by that person appears to have been closed to the public contrary to the act or to a procedural bylaw, the municipality or the local board, as the case may be, shall pass a resolution stating how it intends to address the report. So this will come into effect January 1st, 2018. So in the past, the Municipal Act spoke to the absence of head of council. So in other words, if the head of council is not at a meeting or unable to chair a meeting, basically all the rights of the chair went to the person that was taking over the chair's place. This is getting a little bit more specific in that, because that was pretty wide open. So in other words, if the mayor was not present at the meeting and the deputy mayor wasn't present, a member of council was present, and that was who council chose to act as the chair, they basically were giving all the same rights as the mayor. This now brings it in a little bit and says that it is only with respect to the role of presiding at meetings. So in the area of code of conduct, prior to Bill 68, code of conduct was not a requirement. You could have one, you may have one, and that was basically how the act was worded. Now a municipality shall establish codes of conduct for members of the council of the municipality and its local boards. And the bylaw cannot provide that a member who contravenes a code of conduct is guilty of an offense or is required to pay an administrative penalty. And then the minister may make recommendations or regulations prescribing one or more subject matters that a municipality is required to include. This is, from my understanding, is that these regulations should be coming out very soon so that we can decide what needs to be added to our code of conduct. And this will become effective March 1st, 2019. In terms of integrity commissioners, basically, the way the act reads right now, the integrity commissioner really can only have two functions: that of application of the code of conduct for members of council and boards and so on, or application of any procedures, rules, and policies of the municipality and local boards governing the ethical behavior of members of council and of the local boards. This has been expanded to add any and or all of the following. So we still have the application of the code of conduct, the procedures, rules, and policies, but now we have the application of sections 5.1, and 5.2 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act to members of council and local boards. Requests from members of council local boards for advice respecting their obligations under the code of conduct. Requests for advice respecting obligations under a procedure, rule, or policy of the municipality. Requests for advice respecting council members' obligations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and the provision of educational information to members of council, members of local boards, the municipality, and the public about the municipality's code of conduct for members of council. So there's been quite a few things that have been added there, so a lot of which many integrity commissioners were already providing advice, but this solidifies it. This will be effective March 1st, 2019. Section 223.31 of the Municipal Act also provides for a provision or functions if no commissioner is employed. So if there was no, and it's still not a requirement that you have an integrity commissioner, but if we didn't have an integrity commissioner, then the municipality in needing to have something investigated or advice provided would have to use the integrity commissioner of another municipality. Also, if we did have an integrity commissioner, and insofar as that integrity commissioner's responsibilities were not defined as including one of the items that they can be involved in, we would then also have to use the integrity commissioner of another municipality. And further, the Act goes on to say that a request by a member of council for advice must be in writing to the integrity commissioner, and likewise, the advice that the commissioner provides must also be in writing to the member of council. In terms of educational information, if the commissioner provides educational information to the public, under paragraph 7, the commissioner may summarize advice he or she has provided but shall not disclose confidential information that could identify a person concerned. And then finally, in terms of indemnity, a municipality shall indemnify and save harmless a commissioner or any person acting on behalf of that person in connection with the matter that they've been investigated. In terms of elections, Code of Conduct, they've added a lot to the Municipal Act to cover Code of Conduct contraventions and investigations during a regular election, municipal election. So the Integrity Commissioner shall terminate an incomplete inquiry on or before nomination day. So if it's not complete on nomination day, it has to have been terminated by the IC. A request to recommence an inquiry terminated as a result of the election must be made in writing within 6 weeks following voting day. So they can be brought back, but it has to be brought back formally. And then starting on nomination day for a regular election and ending on voting day, the following rules apply. There should be no request for an inquiry related to a contravention of a code of conduct. ICs shall not report on a contravention of a code of conduct, and the municipality should not consider a recommendation to impose penalties as a result of a code of conduct contravention. These all come into effect March 1st, 2019. The Municipal Act is also amended by adding provisions related to inquiries for alleged contravention of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. This was not formally permitted to go through an integrity commissioner. So section 223 4.1, an elector or person demonstrably acting in the public interest may apply in writing to the IC for an inquiry to be carried out concerning an alleged contravention. Integrity Commissioner may conduct such inquiry as he or she feels necessary, and then the Commissioner may have public meeting to discuss the inquiry. This comes into effect as well March 1st, 2019. Section 223 4.1, the municipality and its local board shall give the Commissioner such information, and this was never really spelled out before in terms of what a municipality had to provide to the IC. So now they're saying that we have to provide whatever the Commissioner feels is necessary to the investigation. The Commissioner is entitled to have free access to all books, accounts, financial records, electronic data, processing records, reports, files, and other papers, pretty much everything that they feel needs to be provided for their inquiry. They have to complete their inquiry within 180 days, and then the rules related to what we were talking about earlier about rules related to conflict of our code of conduct contraventions in terms of a regular election, those same rules apply in terms of investigation of a conflict of interest. Just as the Commissioner was not able to investigate a conflict of interest, that has been changed to allow that. Now, Integrity Commissioner can also apply to the judge to get a decision on whether it is a contravention of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The Commissioner shall advise the applicant if he's not making an application to a judge, and the Commissioner's costs for applying to a judge shall be paid based on the following. If a member committed the conflict of interest. As a council member, it's paid for by the municipality, and if there's contravention was while the member was a member of the local board, then it's the cost to the local board. This is one that's very new, and I don't know what, I've kind of heard what the county's thoughts are on this one, but we'll wait and see how this one goes. This is temporary replacement of an upper tier council member. So council of a local municipality may appoint one of its members as an alternate member of the upper tier council to act in the place of a person who is a member of both the local municipality and its upper tier when the person is unable to attend the meeting of the upper tier council. So in other words, if either the mayor or the deputy mayor are unable to attend, if there has been an alternate appointed, that person would attend in one of their places. Limitations related to that: there can only be one alternate. Alternate is to act in the place of there's no such thing as an alternate to act in the place of an alternate, so you can't have an alternate and then another alternate. And the appointment of alternate head of council of upper tier is not authorized. But if the seat of the alternate member becomes vacant, council may now appoint another alternate member. This becomes effective January 1st, 2018, so at some point we're going to have to talk to council about who they would like to have as an alternate to the mayor and the deputy mayor. In terms of financial sustainability, there's been a number of things that have been put in place through Bill 68 that actually are very good for the municipality in terms of our cash flow and so on. Registration of tax arrears certificate. Formerly, the Act provided that you could not go register a property for tax sale until the property was 3 years in arrears. That's been changed to 2 years, and that's very significant because by the time we register and we have to wait the 1 year for the person to either pay or not pay, you're 4 years in arrears, where this will make it 3 years in arrears at the maximum. In terms of extension agreements, used to have to be with the owner of the property. Now it can be with other owners of the property, and any person that the treasurer is satisfied has an interest in the land. Both the first one, is effective immediately upon royal assent, so that's in place now in terms of tax arrears certificates. And extension agreements will be effective at a date to be named by the lieutenant governor. And then there's a provision for providing municipalities with the authority to initiate expedited tax sale of property vested in the Crown due to the dissolution of a corporation to facilitate bringing such lands into productive use quickly, and that can be done within 90 days of registering the tax arrear certificate. And again, this one will be at a later date that's named. In terms of property tax collection and administration, they provided some small things that improve tax collection and administration. It also more significantly allows for electronic delivery of property tax bills. This was effective on royal assent, and they've also are going to provide for prudent investment, which will allow a municipality to invest money that's not required immediately, pass a bylaw to have this section apply to it, and allow the municipality to invest under the standard, which requires that they exercise care, skill, diligence, and so on. And then once we opt into prudent investing, we cannot change unless the regulation is passed. So again, this one has not come into effect as yet. And that is it in terms of Bill 68. Those are the highlights. There are other small changes, but these are the ones I think that really impact council. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, CEO Hunter, for the presentation. It was there was a lot of words there. What got me at the start is the possibility that we could have electronic participation, so that allows for voting. If you happen to be out of town for whatever reason and we had a meeting and we had my iPad sitting here with my face on it, when a motion came, you would be able to vote on a motion and not be in this room. Is that correct?
That's correct. You would be able to do that. That is if council permitted that through the procedural bylaw.
Anyone else remember any of the questions they had as she was going on? Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although I'm very much in favor of being present in a meeting, I think that that's what we aim for. I do think that it's good to have, or to look at electronic voting. It may encourage more diversity in council. For example, myself in February, I will be bringing my baby again, and although it wasn't all that hard, it's just, it is a little bit hard. I haven't missed a council meeting since having them. And my baby was 6 days old when I brought her to council. So if I had the option of having 1 or 2 meetings at home, that's great. The parental and the parental and the pregnancy leave are certainly interesting too. Although I just do it all. I just bring all my children. So maybe we should look at having a policy of bringing your kids to work, or maybe setting up a daycare center or something. But thank you. I also would just like to request that I would like a paper copy, please, because it's a lot, so I want to look at it in paper. I find what's confusing is January 2018 or March 2019, right? I wish it was all just, I see why it's phased in, but having the separate dates is what's more confusing than anything.
Mrs. Hunter?
Through your worship, I do believe we have copies here that you could take with you.
That's good. With regards to that electronic voting, as soon as you stated that, I wrote down a number. I wouldn't want to see more than 2 of us not attending a council meeting. You know, there might be 2 of us on vacation at the same time, and I don't see a problem with that, but I wouldn't want to see 3 or 4 or 5 of us. You know, I think it said in there we wouldn't have a quorum if it was X number. Mrs. Hunter.
Through your worship, in order to have electronic participation, you have to have quorum in the meeting itself. So it would depend like who was away and how many were on council. Obviously, when we change to an 8-member council, but you basically have to have quorum where the meeting's taking place in order to have folks come in electronically.
But I wrote down 2. Like I thought 2 would be okay, but 3 would be because we would have quorum. So that could be the number 2. Thanks. Anything else? Anyone? Thank you very much. We're looking for a mover and supporter of that presentation. Yes, sir. Councilor Bjorkman, Councilor Rogers. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mrs. Hunter. Like Councilor Bondi said, a lot of words in there.
Item 8.3 is a verbal report from our CAO, Donna Hunter, seeking council support to authorize an extension to the Integrity Commissioner Agreement.
Need a couple seconds? Are you okay? Okay.
Through your worship, the Integrity Commissioner's contract came up on November 3rd, and while there was an opportunity to extend that contract, I think I kind of had the sense that council would like to do another process of putting an RFP out there to see what we get, especially now that there's more integrity commissioners that are available than there were when we first went out to market. So in order to allow us to do an RFP process, which we've already started the process, we still need to have an integrity commissioner on hand should there be any issues that need to be dealt with in the interim. So what we've made arrangements with Mr. Swayze is to extend his contract for 6 months, which will allow us to complete the RFP process, get a contract with the new IC, whoever that may be, and then have that in place without any break in service. So we're basically requesting a 6-month extension, and then once we finish that process, we'll be bringing a report forward to council about a replacement IC.
Any comment? Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mrs. Hunter. I support the recommendation. I just have one question. Is there a retainer fee? Say for the next 6 months, hopefully for the next 6 months there are no issues. Do we still have to pay him something just for being there?
Through your worship, no, he has no retainer. We only pay him for work that he actually performs.
Okay. Councilor Vokes.
find that extremely interesting. He comes in and he takes 2 months' pay away from me, but we're going to replace him because he's no good.
Councilor Bondi,
Make a motion that we extend the Integrity Commissioners Agreement till April 3rd.
supported by Councilor Snively. Any questions to that motion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed?
Okay, item 8.4 is planning and we're into, okay, we're at item 8.4. It's the Planning and Community Services Report 2017-027 concerning site plan control approval for the Essex Center Pavilion. Would you like me to read the motion? Okay. Excuse me. And the motion would be that Planning and Community Services Report 2017-027 be received, and that bylaw 1651, being a bylaw to approve the issuance of tenders for the construction of a pavilion in Essex Center, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed on November 6, 2017.
Supported by Councilor Vokes and Councilor Snively. Any questions to that motion? Councilor Vokes.
So in terms of the pavilion, if we follow through with this tonight as moved and seconded, what does it spell out now, Doug? What does a time frame look like of getting the pavilion up?
Mr. Sweet, I believe.
To your worship, in anticipation based on past budget deliberations, the tender has gone out. We had a site meeting recently that had 9 contractors, and the tender closes on November 15th. So at that time, we'll know the cost, and we can schedule, depending on the weather, late fall or early spring for construction.
So what would stop us from starting in the fall? The only thing concerned is a curing process on cement. The rest is just labor. Why would we wait till spring? Not because if we could move with it and get it erected, then the people could start enjoying it first thing in the spring.
Mr. Sweet.
Your worship, it would be up to the contractor, depending on how they phase in the work. But once it's awarded, we can discuss the timelines and when we can get it going.
Yeah, because, construction in winter, it's not seasonal around here. Even though our inclemental weathers are rough sometimes, construction doesn't stop because it's winter time. Windsor Assembly Plant was built during the winter months, the new addition, so, thanks.
Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Item 8.5 is Finance and Business Services Report 2017-09 related to Ward 1 development. The motion is that Finance and Business Services Report 2017-09, entitled Ward 1 Development. There's 2 sections. One is Highway 3 and County Road 8, and the second part of that is the cost of waiving development charges for Ward 1, that this report be received.
Larson, you like to say a couple?
Through the chair, I'd like to give kind of an overview of the report. It's a little heavy on some details. There's a lot of assumptions that went into it, so if it'd be okay, I'd like to kind of walk through and give kind of the background as to the assumptions that went into it. So, summary of points, as identified, that resolution R17-09-0395, it was requested that we come back with an analysis of the amounts of taxable revenue that this area, as fully developed, would have provided to the town over the past 10 years. And 2, the cost of waiving development charges in Ward 1. So there was a significant amount of information to gather. There was a lot of assumptions. There was a lot of clarity that needed to be had. So we had to get assessment information from 2004 to 17, which we pulled. We pulled that from historical and current budget documents. We needed to get the tax rates from 2004 to 2017, which we pulled through finance. We also need to determine a timeline for development, servicing, and phases. I consulted with planning and infrastructure development, and it was identified that the average development phase within Essex County is about 25 to 35 houses. So we used the higher end of that for this analysis of 35. So based on that, at 13 phases, it was an 11-year cycle to go from 2007 to 2017. So all the information in the tax revenue calculated here is phased in over that time based on 35 houses per year. We also need to determine both the direct and indirect costs associated with the development to ensure that we accurately calculated the net impact. So we showed both sides of the equation. We also need to pull a lot of the economic climate. So there's a lot of research done from 2004 to 2017 to determine the economic climate. However, at the end of the review, it was identified that we would deal with this analysis within a bubble. So the economic climate or impacts, the 2008 financial crisis, those don't apply to this analysis. So some of the background within the report, a draft plan of subdivision was received in 2004 and was executed in 2006. The delay there between 2004 and 2006 was that we were at capacity for a sanitary sewer within the town of Essex. So that upgrade was completed in 2006. I already talked about that. 13 phases. It was identified through infrastructure services that each phase would take between 6 months to a year, depending on weather. So the average cost to the developer to service 35 homes is approximately $1 million, so that needed to be considered into the equation. The average, the fiscal, okay, talked about that. You can see in the report that the population dropped by 2% in 2011 and then increased 6% in 2016. We also took into consideration the asset management requirements. We do have asset management requirements now. We have to do our plan, as you're all well aware. And we took those impacts into consideration based on phase-in of the infrastructure assets. So based on an assumption date that each year we followed, we would assume those prior 35 based on lane kilometers of road. We used a replacement cost based on amounts we're currently seeing. So in summary, the development would consist of 13 phases. Phase 1 to 11 are included in the analysis. That's 2007 to 17. The tax revenue per year averaged over the period is $240,000 per year, with total new tax revenue for the period of 2007 to 17 is $2.6 million. On the other side, the estimated increase to expenses for this is life cycle contributions. It was about $96,000 per year to go into replacement of those assets. We gave it a 25-year useful life based on an average of the useful life for those assets. So there were direct and indirect operational costs of $592,000 per year related to that. And the total related to life cycle and operations was $7.6 million over the life of the asset, which would leave us a net total of negative $4.9 million. So the next portion was item 2, which was waiving the development charges in Ward 2, or Ward 1, sorry. It's pretty self-explanatory in here. It was very difficult to identify a range. We've seen over the past 10 years in that ward a range of 0 to 20. So we took an estimate based on what we know is out there and kind of looking at the economic climate of today. So that's kind of why you got a pretty large range in there of 10 units to 176 ultimately, because 176 was the amount that was identified as potentially be ready to go. So I don't know if Jeff would have anything to add, but.
Mr. Watson, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what Jeff's essentially saying is that from a strictly financial point of view, the perfect community has no houses in it, because houses are lost leaders, and you have to compensate then through taxation, from general revenue to make up for the cost of servicing these houses. And that's the biggest difficulty that you face. Obviously you need housing, but a municipality has to balance that with industrial, with commercial lands, and lands which will actually generate a better income for the town than houses do. And I think this is the big problem. The issue with this property is that, of course, the Media Development Corporation, when they purchased this land, was concerned about not just residential but also commercial development and industrial development. And at the time when the land was being rezoned, their emphasis was on the commercial side, and that's why you have the Tim Hortons and the McDonald's and so on. That's really where they saw a priority and a need in the town. At the time, they didn't see a great need for residential. The problem, of course, was that then the recession kicked in. A whole number of economic factors kicked in, which caused the whole development essentially to fail, because they simply could not generate the interest in the property that they needed to really start servicing and developing it. So but I think times have changed now. There's a greater interest in housing in Essex Center, and of course, as you know, Valente Realty has purchased the property, and they're housing developers. That's their bread and butter, and that's what they're doing. So we're currently working with them on servicing the plan. The zoning's in place. All the agreements for development are in place. So now it's a question of actually getting the physical services in. So I think, while it's interesting historically to look at what could have been, it didn't happen, and now, of course, I think it's going to happen. All the criteria are in place now for new residential development in Essex Center at that location.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. Councillor Vokes?
It's rather confusing. I'll be quite honest with you, Jeff. I really didn't understand a word you were saying. I'm not afraid to say that. My guess is everybody at this bar is thinking the same thing.
So, Vokes, if I can just get you to, Mrs. Hunter and I can't quite hear.
Oh,
If you
I'm just
could get
saying
the
that.
mic, pull it closer. Attaboy.
I'm just saying I appreciate Jeff's report, but I gotta be very honest. I didn't understand a word of it, and my guess is probably 80% of the people at the bar here tonight didn't either. And the bottom line is, the question is would it make sense to waive development charges in Ward 1? Because of the concern of the deserted land at County Road 8 and number 3 that I raised a couple weeks ago, that particular piece of land has been vacant now since that gentleman sat up there as our CAO when I first come on as council. And that particular piece of land, and Ron Rogers too shared that period with us, and Richard Malash and myself and Tout. And with all that being said, my guess is today, as a result of that land sitting vacant, the residents of the town of Essex have succumbed to a loss of millions and millions of dollars as a result of not recovering tax revenues and not doing anything to put incentive programs out there to get that particular real estate occupied. Simple math tells you that based on 100 homes, based on our current development charge, if somebody went in there tomorrow and built 100 homes, it would cost the taxpayers $850,000 to waive those DC charges one time. And within 5.6 years, based on return tax revenue to us at $1,500, because we don't get all the taxes, in 5 years, we're getting money put in the bank. And if that initiative was put in place when back then, 14, 15 years ago, today we would have millions in the bank. But we haven't done anything. And the question is today, very simply, layman, is do we waive those fees and look 5 years up the road, what we get in return? Because it's no more I don't have to be Jeff to figure that out. It's as straightforward as that, and there's asset management, and there's this, and there's that, and there's assumptions here, and this could be, and what's the rate of inflations, and, well, guess what? I could put a million scenarios that would make the opportunity to do it very detrimental and very, very suspicious. But other municipalities have done it. Leamington's doing it right now. Leamington's doing it right now as we speak.
Okay, I've been asked, sir,
Yes.
to have you keep things respectful.
Why
And
am
I
I being
understand what you're saying about our administration. You're kind of slamming them, not really bad, but you are slamming them, and you're just preaching to us instead of discussing what the issue is. So if you could keep it back to the issues here and not preach to us, we'd all appreciate that. Thank you.
Just for the purpose of clarity, when you tell me I'm preaching to somebody, I want to know what that is.
Just be respectful
I
of
will.
our staff.
I'm
Would you
not-
like to address
Yeah,
it,
could somebody
Mrs.
please?
Hunter, seeing how we...
Could
Okay,
somebody please?
Mrs. Hunter has the floor right now, thanks.
Through you, Your Worship. I think if Councillor Vos looks at the bottom of that report, he'll see that there's a number of people that have been involved in that report. And I also understand the number of hours that Director Morrison put into this report. And to say that it's got this and it's got that and it's got this and it's got that and that we've had net revenue when we don't in this analysis, I think is very disrespectful of the amount of effort that has gone into this report. I think that is what I am trying to relay here.
So if I could on that, and I'm going to clear that up, and all due respect to you, Mrs. Hunter, is it wasn't disrespectful. It was very clear to Jeff, if you listen what I said. I said, I didn't understand a word of what you just said, Jeff. And I didn't, because I'm not an accountant. And therefore, hence, I didn't understand it. And as far as everybody else involved in it, I did nothing in terms of discussing about them and anything they may have done. I did say...
Okay, I'll stop you right there, because you did say 80% of us haven't got a clue what he said.
And, yeah, I'm
Sir,
talking about council
okay, I
members.
just want to mention
Yeah.
that you made that statement, which you shouldn't be making. If you had have read this, like we might all have,
Yeah.
we would have understood it a little more, especially when he explains to us exactly what he was saying. You're saying we have all this money. Read the report, like our CEO said. There's a deficit here, and you say there's a big profit, but go ahead.
I didn't want to say there's a profit. As a matter of fact, I said there was a deficit. Again, people aren't listening. I said there was an $850,000 deficit in the first year.
We would be how many millions ahead had we done this 15 years ago?
In a
Go ahead.
5-year period, I said, you would recover that money based on a DC charge at $8,500, based on assuming $1,500 coming back to the municipality with the balance going to county and to education. That's what I said. And so I'm just asking council to consider... Go ahead. You look like you want to say something. No. Oh, okay.
Listening, that's what we want to hear.
So all I'm asking is council to make a strong consideration to waive the development charges just for that particular land, just for that one time period, that one initiation, recognizing that based on layman consideration, within a 5 to 6 year period, you recover all your funding to launch that project by waiving the DC charges.
Okay, thank you, sir. Finished? Councilor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the report there, Jeff. Looking at just the summary, the residential tax revenue is $2.6 million. Our life cycle allocations are $1 million. Direct and indirect costs are $6.5 million. So over time, it's costing us more than it's bringing in. That's what we're being presented to from administration. The cost of, I would take an average of 20 homes. We had a hold on building in the town of Essex Center last year, so the numbers were down. But if we did 20 houses next year, it would be $209,000 in fees that we would have to waive. But we don't waive them; we make them up some other way. We would have to come up with that money to do it. I've always stood by that. Essex Center is developing at a decent rate. We are somewhere that builders want to build. They are building, and it wouldn't be right. We either have to do it for the entire Ward 1. We couldn't do it for just one development that one developer is developing. That would not be allowable. But as far as I'm concerned, the development that's happening in Essex Center is good. We're getting consistent building, and to put it to a 0, we would get the 20. Maybe we would get a bump up. Maybe there would be an additional 10 or 20. But now it's $400,000 that we have to make up those funds. And I don't think that's the right thing to do for the residents, as once we've put all this infrastructure in, the cost to us as a town continues to go up greater than the money that's coming in.
Thank you, sir. I have Councillor Snively and Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, through you, Worship. We got to remember one thing here. The advantage Essex has, they're 10 minutes from Windsor. To waive development fees here with the rate of building that's going on now, I don't think there's a need for it at all. I mean, people are moving to Essex, people want to come to Essex because they're close to their work downtown Windsor. So I wouldn't support waiving development fees in this ward here. Okay, I did in Ward 4, but that was a different circumstance altogether. So I would just want to make that clear to the public and to the media. It's altogether different. But as far as Ward 1 here, I agree with Councillor Bjorkman. The development here, residential growth, is going at a rate that it should be. And I do support any developer coming in here, but not waiving development fees for sure. Not in Ward 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would be helpful if council members showed up to council meetings prepared. There's been two questions that have come up tonight showing that reports and agendas haven't been read, which doesn't make our job here any easier. That being said, I do not see Ward 1 being in the housing crisis, similar to what Ward 4 is. If you look at the figures, my iPad just went off, but if you look at the figures, for every $1,500 we get, or every resident we have, only 600, I forget what figure I was looking at, but $600 of that comes in as revenue, and another $900 comes in as an expense. So every house we add, we're adding expenses, which is what our policy planner, Jeff Watson, was trying to tell us, if we would just listen. But I find that some council members don't want to listen either, and it's extremely irritating. So we know that when we get new homes, we need to come up with user fees and grants and rates to make up the difference. That being said, the more homes we have, the more stronger our communities are, the more stronger our schools are, and the more stronger our businesses are, the more used our parks are. Those are all good things. But I guess I'm just a little frustrated. I understood the report very clearly. I read it by myself, and I paid attention when staff were presenting. And I wish all of us had the same courtesy. Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Vokes.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I'm not going to carry on. It's a simple request. I'm not going to take people throwing stones and suggesting things, but I can tell you this for the record. As a result of no development in that particular piece of real estate, and then it was suggested that it has to go across the board to all of them. No, it doesn't. We're council and we do what's in the interest of the community, in the interest of generating revenues. But that particular piece of land has lost the town of Essex about $8 million since it's been sitting idle, and we're talking about maybe at the worst $1 million in DC charges being waived. And with all that, in closing, this council is not open-minded, and the reason when I say that is because the development of that property, we're focusing on housing right now. I just use housing as an example. There's many opportunities that was originally scheduled to go in there. Car dealerships, restaurants, banks, and it's outside, and I just used the housing consideration as an example, but this council wants to think I just want to waive the DC charges on housing. I don't. I want to waive the fees on getting other opportunities in there for our community to enjoy. And again, whether it's banks, restaurants, whatever it may be, because the original site plan called for all that. It called for car dealerships. So, council, open your mind up a little bit. It's more than just houses.
Point of information.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, I thought we had no DC charges on commercial and industrial already. Do we have DC charges on commercial and industrial?
Mrs. Hunter.
Through your worship, we have DCs on commercial, but not industrial.
Okay.
So that's my point. There's all kinds of money to be had outside the houses. I'm not talking just about housing. Look at the big picture. But if you don't want to support it, don't support it. I don't care. I'll just raise it, and council will either support it or they won't. And I'll just report out tomorrow, council didn't support it, because that's what happened.
Okay, before I go to you, Councilor Snively, your request, I believe, and I could draw the minutes up here from our last meeting when you requested this, it was about residential, and now we're talking about everything, so, no, listen, please, that's all I'm going to say. We're not going to argue this. Councilor Snively, you have the floor, sir.
Point of interest for clarity.
Okay, yes, sir, go ahead. Okay, we'll check back and make sure we correct it. I have Councilor Bjorkman first and then Councilor Snively. Councilor Snively.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say one last thing. I want to thank Donna, and I want to thank Jeff and Chris for their hard work. We went through a rezoning out there, and we are getting a good tax base coming in, and we are continuing to grow in this municipality, and we will. So I'll leave it at that. And we are growing in residential growth here. You can't sit here and say we're not. So, good. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, I just need a second to talk with our CEO, ask her a question. Now, if no motion's been made, what? Okay, can I receive this report first and then, okay. Motion to receive this report. Councilor Snively, Deputy Mayor Malash. And to that, I would just say, wow, I can't believe how much time and effort went into what I thought was just a little question to come up with this stuff. I hate to say how many hours this would have taken. Wow. It's quite a report, I'll tell you. And when I talk about having a staff that does a hell of a job on our behalf, more proof, just this thing. I couldn't dream of putting a package together like this. But anyways, Councilor Oakes made a motion and was supported. Oh, you're making a motion right now, sir.
You have to vote first.
Oh, we got to vote on this one. Motion to receive, that's right. Receive the report, yep.
I'd like to put a motion forward that council consider or council waive the DC charges for residential and commercial development in the vacant property at County Road 8 and number 3 bypass, specific to. And I'm asking for a recorded vote, please, because there's a couple developers I want to talk to tomorrow. And again, it's commercial and residential.
Okay, the motion's been made, everybody has it, and it's been supported by Councilor Rogers. You have the floor.
Yep, just one minute. Okay, to the motion brought by
I'd
Councillor...
like to comment on this motion.
Okay? At the motion,
Everybody gets
you're
one
right.
shot here, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. For clarity, that particular property, how many developers own property in that development?
Do we have that?
Do we have that answer?
Maybe Mr. Nepsy or
3.
Mr. Watson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Valenti Realty owns the residential portion of the land, which is the largest parcel. Then there's a holding company which owns the former Loblaw site, and then there are 1, 2, 3 other property owners for the commercial and what will become the industrial lands.
Okay. So that entire development is already sold, so it's only going, we're looking at working just with the developers that are already there. There's no opportunity for anybody else to get in. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Snively?
Thank you, Worship.
All right, Councillor Snively, I have Deputy Mayor first,
Okay. Yeah.
and then you.
Through you, Your Worship. I'm not, in general, I'm not a supporter of waiving any DC charges. I believe, and the administration has given us this lecture many a times, that we have to, and the province comes along and it's legislated by the province to have a report done every so often to tell us what portion of taxes or fees or development charges that persons that are coming new into your community should be paying towards future new services that we have to provide. So whatever we decide not to charge those persons coming in, new persons coming into the community, those taxes or those costs will fall on the backs of everyone else that is a current taxpayer in the community. So very good explanation tonight by our administration. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, with explaining how those future costs affect us, particularly with homes, that we would be actually losing money or paying out more money than what we would have collected in taxes. And that's what this report is saying. So as far as development charges go, I'm not in favor, usually ever, of reducing or eliminating any development charges. Back about a year ago or a year and a half ago, we realized that we had some issues in Harrow. We were looking at trying to show the school board that we were supporting that area and trying to get encouraging additional residential development in that area so that the school board would see that the town is taking strides in trying to increase population in that area for the high school to have more bodies. So far it hasn't worked. We haven't had a huge influx, and for that reason, I've continued to support having a reduced DC out in that area. But as far as the rest of the community, I think it's a backwards move to try and say now that we're not going to have any development charges. Those charges reduce the load, the tax burden of those current residents, and new development in town should expect that it's going to happen. And it happens in most communities across this county, across this province, across this country, and it's probably going on in the United States as well. Some communities choose to put a hiatus at certain times on development charges, but I think that you're going to see development happen here, and we've got people that are interested in developing here, particularly in Ward 1. But if we're going to reduce it in Ward 1 now, I think we should be reducing it across the entire community. If we're only going to do it, if we're going to say Ward 4, now Ward 1, why not Ward 2 and Ward 3 as well? And then the next thing you know, we have no development charges at all. So I am not in favor of reducing development charges at all anywhere else other than what we've already committed to in Ward 4, Harrow, because we know that we've got an issue there and we're trying to encourage some development to happen in that area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Snively.
Through your worship, the deputy mayor said exactly what I was going to say. I support it in Ward 4 because of the situation there. But the other, if we're going to do it in Ward 1, and I agree 100%, go right across all the wards. But I don't support that because the location of Essex itself, towards Windsor, and what's going on in Essex today. So I would not support waiving development fees.
Thank you. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not in favor of supporting the reduction in residential fees. I would be open to having a conversation with council, not tonight, but another open and public, transparent conversation about looking at the commercial development fees and what that means. This report stuck really much on residential, so I would be willing to investigate what it would look like waiving commercial fees. Do other municipalities do it? What is, the tax on residents when we look at that? But I think that conversation should happen at another night as well.
Thank you. for us. Ron, would you like to say something, Mr. Rogers? You have one shot at this motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to suggest to the mover that he put a time frame on it.
Yes, sir. Use your mic so we can all hear it too, please.
To
A time frame for the
Counselor Rogers,
moratorium,
In terms of a time frame, what do you mean?
6 months.
6 months for the DC charges to be in place? And then after that, return to a normal fee? Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'll take 3 months, Ron. Because I know they're waiting.
It's up to you.
I know they're waiting. I'll take, yeah, I'll go a month. I'll go a month. Good point, by the way. I'll go a month because they'll commit to it tomorrow. Thanks for that, Ron.
Okay, finish, Mr. Roger? Okay.
Through
Mrs.
you, Your
Hunter?
Worship, I just want to reiterate to council that it's not simply, I can cut them off tomorrow and there'll be no DCs tomorrow. There is a process, it's a 60-day process where we have to follow according to our Development Charges Act. So if it's a month, it's going to take a month plus the 60 days.
Okay, so I'll for the purpose of the motion, I will make it 90 days. 'Cause there'll
Okay.
Yeah.
90 days. Okay, my turn. And then Councilor Vokes made the motion, so we'll end up with him. I'm looking at this article that goes back to a special meeting of council on May the 19th, 2015. The presentation was given by former CEO Ross Phillips, which provided an overview of physical indicators. In his presentation, he identified that the municipal taxes per resident were approximately $652, while the municipal expense per resident were $1,577. Thus, for every dollar spent by the municipality, and that's us, in 2015, only 41% came from the residential tax base. Wow. You think I'm going to be in favor of this motion? Councilor Vokes.
Yeah, okay. All I'm suggesting to you is it's profoundly proven.
Okay, just to the motion. You made a motion.
This is to the motion.
I need to hear the motion, please, so I know if you're
Okay.
swaying or not.
Okay, the motion at the moment is asking council to waive development charges for vacant residential and commercial property at Highway 3 and County Road 8 for 90 days.
Okay, there's not much more you can say.
There is actually, and I'm a little astounded that prior to any other counselor, you didn't ask for a repeat of the motion, but when I speak, you ask for a repeat. But with that being said.
Because they speak to the motion, sir, and you don't usually stay to the motion.
Yeah, point of order, because I said
That's
two
uncalled
words.
for.
I said two
Let him
words, you stopped me, and you told me to speak to the motion, and in 2 words, you determined whether or not I was speaking to the motion. I said profoundly proven. And
I asked you just to stick to it. I didn't say you weren't sticking to it. I asked you to.
I want to reiterate one more time. I said profoundly proven. Oh, hold on, Councilor Vokes. You stopped me. You turned to Lori. You got clarification on the motion, and you don't even know what I was going to say. So why did you stop it?
Just told you if you would listen to me.